All right, I'm Bill Covey from Covey Clan Hunting, and I'm here with Andy Hall. And we both hunt in the Bristol, New York area, as well as Andy, I know, hunts in Farmington, New York as well. And we just wanted to talk about the elephant, or rather, it's about the size of an elephant in the room here. This giant whitetail buck, world-class whitetail buck that Andy harvested in the early 2000s. But before we get into that story, I wanted to really kind of bring it back to the beginning and talk to Andy about, what it is about hunting. Kind of where did you get your start in hunting and your passion for
it? So when I was a kid, my father hunted in a group of guys down Cohocton direction, and it was like, the hunting camp atmosphere. You went down there, they had a camper, and you went down and they told all the stories and all that. I think the first time I went down there, I was 7, and I was hooked. Right. Just from the atmosphere,
Absolutely.
I begged and begged and begged my father to take me opening day, but it was not. It was always like Thanksgiving that I went. But
right.
So it was that being in the woods. I've always loved it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you got started with your dad. Did that passion change for you as things went on? Like, as you evolved as a hunter, maybe talking about like your first experience in the woods compared to now that are a seasoned veteran at hunting.
It all changed for me really when I met my best friend Hal. We met at Boy Scout camp. He was a hunter and had that real big passion like I did. My father was, he loved being out there and hunting and that, but he never, went above and beyond. He just loved being out there walking around.
Right.
My friend Hal had that drive to let's try this, let's do that, and then we just developed this bond, and we knew exactly what each other was thinking about, and that was with him when I got the big one. It was every deer that we got. We had a pact. If he got a deer, I would do the dressing, and vice versa.
Right.
And we just it was that brotherhood there that really got me going, and he. He pushed me. He had a hand that was a birth defect, and I was so amazed by what he could do. He would strap his bow to his hand, and he would shoot a right-handed bow left-handed.
Wow!
And he I can't tell you how many animals that he's harvested or did harvest. It was just amazing. He started with a recurve where he would shoot and he would turn his hand and catch the string.
Oh wow!
Because there was no fingers, but he would catch it, and just him pushing me. If I can do it, you can do it. He says so. It was fun.
That's awesome. I kind of equate that to. Being on a sports team, you have people that push you to go to different levels, right? And it kind of sounds like Hal was that person to you that kind of drove you to improve in the way that you hunted.
Oh, for sure. And we hit it right off. At Boy Scout camp, we taught rifle and shotgun, so we were around, the weapons all the time. And I remember we shot Mossbergs at camp. And he's like, man, it's nothing like my Deerslayer. And I said, I got one of those. So we hit it off right there too.
Right.
So, and I know that you've got a prized Deerslayer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just purchased it last year. I always, a bunch of the hunters that hunt around me have Deerslayers, and I've always been kind of jealous of them because, it just seems like it's an awesome gun, and hence the name, the Deerslayer. So, and I finally harvested my first one this year with a Deerslayer, and it was an awesome thing. I've always hunted with a Remington 870, shotgun or a 760 Game Master rifle, which both of them I absolutely love. But there was something about that Deerslayer. Number one, I've never shot a gun as loud as that thing. I don't know why, but when I'm out in the woods and that thing goes off, it's just like there's an earthquake going on. I don't know if yours is the same way, but
that's the reason I shoot a 20 gauge.
Right. Yeah, I went with the 12. It's got some kick, and it's loud.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But that's awesome. Very good. So I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about this big guy up here. So I guess let's start off not necessarily with the hunt itself, but like your feelings now. Like I just would like to know how you feel about really shooting a world-class, this is really a buck of a lifetime for anyone, no matter who you are. And what does that mean to you now, years later? And I think you got it in like 2004, 2005? 2005.
Yeah. Growing up, I've got in this building, I've got every rack that I've ever, harvested. Always wanted to get a big one, and it seemed like everybody that I hunted with had gotten one mounted, and I said, someday I'll get one. Someday I'll get one. And you push yourself. You go through that stage where you shoot anything at first. Just I got a buck,
Right.
And then you kind of graduate up. Okay, I'm gonna try to get something bigger than the last one, and then you're just back in the day, it was, you didn't have all the media stuff. It was, looking at the magazine, like the Rack magazine from Buckmasters or something like
Right.
that. You're going, wow, it would be so cool,
Right.
And, so you push yourself to do that. When it finally happened,
Mm-hmm.
it was surreal. I lost bodily control. My lower jaw was shaking so bad I couldn't talk. It was hard to walk. It was just an unreal feeling.
Right.
Adrenaline you can't describe, and best feeling in the world for sure.
Right.
Now, do I still enjoy it? Yeah, it's my pride and joy. But I think I told you earlier, it's one of those deals where, those people that put their time in, those
Right.
guys that, do all the stuff that you do above and beyond hunting, and have never had that feeling. You pray and you wish that those people could have that.
Right.
And sometimes you're a little bummed when it's like, oh, that was my first day out ever, and I shoot a
Right.
190, oh boy, they don't understand how many hours it really takes.
Absolutely. It's definitely a process, and I agree with that, you're pushing yourself and putting that time into hunting and all the prep work that you have to do, setting up your tree stands, plowing a field, and, getting that soil ready, food plots and all that sort of stuff. Just a lot of time and effort and scouting and wind direction and the camo, the scent control. There's just so many things
So much.
that you can do to, put in that time to prepare for something like that. So let me back up a little bit. Have you, before you harvested this deer, had you ever seen it before?
Never.
Never saw it before?
Never saw them. That piece of property over there where we hunt is always had big bucks. You'd get a glimpse at a trophy every year.
Right. And this is like, is it more farmland?
Where we hunt is all the thick stuff.
Right.
And it's surrounded by all the farmland. So they have all that food, and we're the cover.
Right.
So, like opening day, everybody gets into the woods and starts moving deer around.
Mm-hmm.
They came to our spot to hide.
Right.
So we had the thick stuff.
Gotcha.
We would have our trails, we would have our little food plots, we would have our, oak trees or hickory trees that we'd fertilize,
Right.
or apple trees, that we sit, at that time of the year. We had our spots, but it was mostly just the where do I go to hide?
Right. Absolutely.
Spot.
That's nice. So with this particular hunt, can you kind of walk me through that day? I know it's a while ago, but a deer this big, I'm sure you haven't forgotten.
No, you remember every second. So I guess to start off with, this is my best friend's house. So we hunted the property. I'd hunted there since 1984.
Right.
And I shot this buck in 2005. So you knew the area. I went to the thickest stand that we had on the property that year. There was a big 8-pointer that we were watching there, and actually there was a big 9-pointer here in Bristol that year as well. So I was, where do I go? So I said, I'm just going to the thickest stuff there is. So I sat there first thing in the morning, and my father was on the other side of the road, and a couple other guys were throughout the property, and it was a little chilly that day. So my dad, in his, I think he was 72 at the time, didn't really want to sit that long, didn't want to make him sit that long. So I said, I'm going to sit until like 9 o'clock, and then I'm going to come over. And there was this little teeny thicket along the edge of the road that you would push. You walk through one person, and it would push stuff out towards where he was sitting. So I said, I'll do that. So I got down. I didn't see anything in the morning. I got down and walked over there. And about halfway through this little thicket, I come across a guy, and I'm like, "What's going on? This is our spot, our property here." He's like, "I hit a deer across the road. It came in this way. I'm just trying to get it. Trying to get it out. To my cousin or some relative. I don't know." But I said, "Oh, okay. Well, where's he at?"
Right.
"Well, he's back there." I go, "Oh, well, that's where my dad is."
Right.
And sitting in a spot, not knowing somebody else is in there, that's thick enough where it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm like, oh boy. So I said, "Well, do you have blood? Because I'm colorblind. I can't see blood. I track by track." So he says, "Yeah, I got blood right here." I said, "Okay, it's going that way. You follow the blood. I'll go over here about 20 yards and walk through to you out to my dad and your friend there." So I get about 15 yards away from him, and he shoots, and it is thick. And scared me. What the heck? So I go back over to him. I go, "What happened?" He goes, "It was right here. It got up. I shot." I go, "Well, did you hit it?" He goes, "I don't know. I broke the rear sight on my gun this morning."
Oh, man.
And basically that just set me off.
Right.
Now I'm worried. How's my dad? Where did he shoot?
Right.
Whatever. So I go, "Where'd the deer go?" He said, "It ran back towards the road." I go, "Okay, you go get your friend and go get that deer across on your property.
Right.
I'm going to go out and see if my dad is okay."
Right.
So I went out to my dad, and he was fine, and he never even saw them. So I was frustrated. So I said, I'm going to go. I'm going to go back to Bristol. I'm going to see if I could find that 9-pointer back here. So I got back to the house. I had all my stuff off. I was putting my shotgun behind the seat of my truck, and my dad shoots. So I'm like, uh-oh.
Right.
So now I get my stuff, go over there, and sure enough, he shot a nice 8-pointer. So, this was 11 o'clock, something like that. So we took care of the deer, got it back, took all the pictures, and so when we were done with all that, we had a little lunch. It was too late to come back to Bristol.
Right.
So I said, all right, I'm just going to go back over to my spot. Long-winded story, I know. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's great that your dad got that 8-point buck too.
Yeah, it was great. perfect shot.
It all was meant to be. It all led up to that, right?
And that's what kept me at the property.
Right.
So I went back to my spot, the same place I was sitting in the morning. I got up in there, 2:30, something along that lines, and sitting there for about an hour, and I hear something, and it's all this pencil brush, that's 8, 9, 10 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
So you really can't see anything unless they step out into a little clearing or a trail or something like that. But I could distinctly hear the branches hitting antler.
Right.
So you go, that's a buck.
Right.
You knew it was a buck. And they'd come into like 40 yards and I still couldn't see it. You'd see the stuff moving a little bit. And it turned and walked away after a couple minutes. So I sat there for a while, I'm going to get down. I'm going to go out, backtrack around, and get to the edge of our thicket to see if I can see it. So I got down real quiet, snuck all the way around, it took me a long time. Got up to the edge, and it's kind of a crown on the edge of the woods there. And I get up to the top of the crown, and all of a sudden I see 2 deer, and I'm like, oh. I put up, the binoculars, and you just saw put the binoculars down. I said, okay, I got to get closer.
How far away do you think you were at that point?
At that point, he was about 250 yards.
Okay.
So, mind you, I'm old school. I was wearing a jacket just like your shirt.
Right.
Wool pants and an orange, blaze orange hat.
Right.
So I really wasn't stealthy in terms of camouflage.
Right.
So I said, I just got to get closer. And he's basically tending a doe. He's standing right behind her. So I would go, 2 or 3 steps. I'd step on a stick. It would snap. I'd stop. He'd turn and look at me, even from 250 yards. So, at this point, it's a giant.
Right.
And never knew it had drop time. Just knew it was wide. So finally I got up to a crest of the hill. I'm probably 175 yards-ish from him.
Now, is this during bow season or gun season?
Opening day shotgun.
Opening day of shotgun. Okay.
Yeah. Back then it wasn't even rifle. It was just shotgun.
Right.
So 175 yards, she twitches her tail and she goes into the thicket. And I'm like, I have to try.
Right.
I don't think I'll get another chance. And so I step along the edge and I get down on a knee and I grab a sapling and understand, I probably shouldn't even say this, but people get mad, but I've had one shotgun since I was a kid.
Right.
It was a 20 gauge Ithaca Deerslayer.
Right.
That is like a second extension of your arm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I shoot open sight bird barrel.
Yep.
With a modified barrel, and I shoot 5/8 ounce Remington sluggers through that. I can put a group size of a baseball at 100 yards standing with that.
Yep.
It is that true.
I believe it. It's an accurate gun. Just shooting mine, I know what you mean.
So I've just I've taught it, shot a ton of time. I've put my time in. So I felt comfortable with the shot, taking it, but it was still a giant buck. So you're nervous. So I'm on a knee. I've got a sapling. That thing's a long way out there. So I aim a little bit high on it, and I shoot.
Did you shoot like towards the spine, like that?
It was right above his
front shoulder.
Right above his front shoulder, his lungs, and I just put it right above his back.
Right.
And I shot, and he just turned and looked at me, and I'm like, I missed him, but I knew I missed him high.
Right.
Because if I had shot low, I would have seen stuff flying up,
right,
and it probably would have scared him, and he'd been gone. So it's just instinctive. I had ejected the shell and put one in right at the shot.
Right.
So I put it right down on him again, and I put it right where I wanted to Excuse me. And right when I shot, he had taken a step.
Okay.
So I had spined him just above basically where his diaphragm would be.
Yeah.
And he went down, white bellies, rack stuck in the mud, leaves flying everywhere, kicking. And then he got back onto his legs again, or onto his shoulders or elbows or whatever you want to say, trying to get up, trying to move.
Yep.
And I shot again, and I hit him in that front shoulder, and I rolled him into the thick stuff. And there was a
Right.
little stream right there. I couldn't see him anymore. So now,
So at that moment, did you feel confident that he was dead, or were you kind of unsure? Like,
no.
right, you're like, oh no, like,
I knew I had hit him once.
right.
And so at that point,
So what's? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what are you feeling at that moment? Like when you shoot him, you know you hit him, but you're unsure. You know you got a monster buck on your hands. But what's going through your thought process at that time?
so honestly, I go, I've only got 2 shots left. This was the
Right.
first thing I was doing. So I was fumbling through pockets. I had dropped, a couple live rounds, and I had filled, the rest of them into the tube. So, and the whole time you're doing this, you're just watching. I'm not looking at the gun. I'm
Right.
just watching
You're
to
just-
see if he's taking off. So I started going down, gun raised, really, going down towards that direction. And all of a sudden I see movement, and I see the doe take off. So there was one spot where I could see. I just held it there, for a minute or two, not long. He never came out. So I got closer and closer, and then I'm like, am I in the right spot for a shot? Should I go
Right.
someplace else? Looking, and then I heard splashing. He was in that creek, in that little drainage ditch,
Right.
and when I heard that splashing, I go, he can't get up.
Right.
So now I'm like, all right, I got
You gotta put
him.
one more in.
I just got to finish it.
Right.
So I'm sneaking down there, trying to pick my openings in case he does get up, and I get, I'm probably 10 yards from it, and I knew exactly where he is, but it's like all this goldenrod
Yeah.
right there next to the creek, and I'm peeking over, and I'm probably at this point 8 feet from it, and I see his rack. I don't even remember aiming. I don't remember anything.
Right.
All I know is I missed him. And
So this is your third or fourth shot now?
this is my 4th
Your
shot
fourth shot.
at 8 feet, and I missed it.
Right.
And at that point, he turned and looked at me, and I just remember it's, just like being a monster, and I could see this one, the farthest out drop tine.
Uh-huh.
And
One of 4 of them, right?
one of 4.
Wow.
And the long drop tine
It's amazing.
was turned, and it was basically right at his heart area,
Right.
but I didn't even know it was there.
Right.
Right? So, there's all sorts of brush right there, and goldenrod, and, it's right at the end of the day. And so I shot, and he bellered, and he went underwater. And I knew at that point he was dead.
Right.
I lost everything, all composure. I was just beside myself. I finally gotten a trophy.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
And the only thing I could think of was, I want somebody here with me.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I left him right there.
Right.
I probably the scariest thing I ever did, but I left him.
Right.
He was totally underwater.
Did you realize in that moment, like, what you just did? Like, what the magnified?
No.
Like,
No.
Yeah.
I knew that I shot, so I knew I shot something really wide and it had a drop time.
right,
And, and from being that close to it, I knew it had a bunch of points.
Right.
But I didn't know anything about it. And quite honestly, I didn't want to go up to it. It was pretty scary.
yeah,
He was a big animal.
Yeah.
His neck, I think, was 33 inches.
wow,
And that was my waist size at the time. So I just wanted my best friend and my dad to be part of that.
absolutely. That's what I was just going to ask you. When you do something like that and you're overwhelmed, you want to have people around, and like, who were the first people to come and see this and to help you with it, and then after that, did you have anybody else want to come and take part of this once you
Yeah.
kind of figured out what it was?
Yeah. So I guess where I shot the deer to Hale's house, probably 300-400 yards, and it is, it's getting dark and it's time for everybody to get out of the woods and all that. So that day, it was my friend Hale, my dad, and two of my brother-in-laws, my sister's husband and my wife's brother. And they were all hunting with us. And there was another gentleman too, just a friend from camp.
Right,
So I just wanted to get back and tell my dad and Hal. And the closer I got to the house, the worse I got. I
Right.
was physically holding my jaw. It was
Yeah.
shaking so bad that I couldn't believe it. So I got back to the house, and my brother-in-law is unloading, or loading up his car with his stuff, and taking off his camo or he was hunting stuff, and he's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I just walked right by him. I wanted to
Right.
talk to my dad,
Yeah.
and my best friend. So I finally got to them, and I couldn't talk. So Hale grabbed me and goes, "What's wrong? Did you shoot yourself? What happened? What's going on?" And I finally got it out. I go, "I just shot a monster. It's got to be 2 foot wide with a drop time."
right,
And that's pretty much all I knew
right.
at that point. And he's like, "Oh, okay, you're
Right.
okay.
Right.
It's just a deer. It's just So
Right.
I'm like, okay. So, I am on cloud 9 right now, and I'm saying we need flashlights and I need help.
Right,
So we get a couple flashlights, and my two brother-in-laws and we go out there, and the one other guy wasn't even out of the woods yet. So, but we left, and Hale and my dad, a little slower, takes his time,
Right.
not gonna fall.
He's in his 70s at this point,
He
right?
was in his 70s.
Right.
So they're following us. So we're going over now, after we get all our stuff together, it's dark.
Right,
So I'm trying to figure out where it is.
yeah,
So I'm, walking the edges and that. And then finally I'm just going to walk up the creek,
right.
So I start walking up the creek, and then I see just a little bit of its back.
Mhm.
And I said, here it is. And this is the funny part of it. My brother-in-law, Kip, who he's great. He actually helped me, place to live when I was at the time, and he actually bought my lifetime hunting license.
Oh,
for
wow.
me back
That's
then.
awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. So he was with me, and the whole way over there, he's going, "Calm down, Andy. It's just a deer. Calm down. It's just
Right.
a deer." I'm going, "It's not just a deer. I know it's big." So I said, "It's right here," and he's coming up to me, and he's got the flashlight, and I reached down underneath the water, and I knew there was one drop time, so I
Right.
reached under there and I hit it. I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And I reach under this side, and I'm going, "Is that a tree root? Is this a stick?"
Right,
And then I'm like, "Oh my God!" I could feel them
Right.
all on the underside, and I picked that rack up out of the water and held it up to him, and there was some 4-letter words said
Right.
at that point, but it was just unreal.
oh,
And we got it out of the water into a little clearing there, and we had 2 flashlights. And I told the guys, my brother-in-laws, and this is get me emotional every time, but I said I want one of the lights on the deer, and I want one on my dad's face.
Right.
I want to
So
see
you
his
could have
expression.
that
Yep.
right.
And it was awesome. You
Oh,
know, he came,
sure.
and nobody could believe it. You're just looking at it going,
Right.
where are we, Iowa? You know?
Right. Absolutely.
And I still remember my friend Hal. He came up, saw that thing, got right down on his hands and knees and kissed it. Kissed it right on the end of the nose. You know, he was so happy.
Oh,
you know,
man.
that's what you know. That's what you don't understand about friendship. He's
Yeah.
just as happy for me as if he got it.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know, so yeah, that was it. And we stayed out there for hour and a half.
Right.
You know, gutting it and the
Right.
whole 9 yards and.
Did you go to sleep with it that night too,
Well,
or what?
yeah,
Did you?
well, so there was just that group, and then you know we didn't have any cameras. We didn't
Right.
have any cameras, so we're calling people. Can you bring a camera? Can you
Right.
bring a video or you know, something? So we got some pictures eventually, but we carried it 400 yards. I didn't want to ruin the cake. We carried it,
Wow.
and so we all hung
The
out
3 of you
there.
carried it?
Well, we
did
took
you
turns. There was 4 of us.
4 of you. How much did the deer actually weigh?
Field dress, it was only 175.
Okay.
You can see in the pictures and that when I first saw the deer, I knew it was a buck because of that shape. He was all front end.
Right.
That buffalo
Yeah.
front end, no
Right.
hindquarters.
And
He
being
had
the
run it
first
all
week
off.
of gun season, it's probably right in the rut at that point.
Yeah, he was full rut.
Yeah.
Stink. His legs were black all the way up to right to his hips.
Right.
He was pretty stinky, but he got to chase them all.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So that night, I drove him. The only place I went is on the way home. I went to my taxidermist. Really, really good friend of mine. Hunted together forever. Went to him. I had to show him.
Right.
And then we went back. Came back to this shop. I had just built this shop, and I had taken my classic car that's right here. I had taken that out and parked it right across the front of the door, so you couldn't get in here without the keys to the car and to the barn.
Right.
And
Got to protect that deer.
Yep. And we hung my dad's deer right here, and my deer was right behind this wall.
Oh, wow.
And we sat in here, and my dad and I had a beer.
Awesome. That's, you can't, hunting to me, I mean, obviously it's about the pursuit of something this awesome and world-class deer, like I said before, but even more important than that is what you just described, those friendships and that moment with your dad, and those are memories you can't replicate, you can't replace, you can't,
Nope.
it's just it's an amazing thing. And I've, you can experience that in a lot of ways, but I'll tell you, I've never experienced those moments like it is when you're actually hunting. It's something different. It's hard to describe, but when that happens, I remember, the biggest buck I got that you actually scored for me, in 2019. After I shot that buck and brought it in, my wife Jen actually offered to help me field dress the deer. And to me, the fact that she actually, she'd never done that before, but she came over, she's holding the deer so I can start gutting it, and and just remembering her being there with me for that experience was, it was very meaningful. I'll always remember that, that whole experience. So I get what you're talking about. It's unbelievable, just hunting in general, but, these deer are so, they're so strong. Their will to live is so strong. Even this buck that you had to put in a few shots there to get him down, and it's remarkable. 175 shot or yard shot with a shotgun is no small feat. You know, with open sights and
there was somebody else helping. I'm sure.
yeah, absolutely. It all happens for a reason. That is very true. Unbelievable. So, tell me a little bit about you know. So after you got this deer, you brought it back here. Did you get anybody else? You know, kind of word travels fast a little bit when you shoot something that big, especially for an area like this. Kind of describe that experience where maybe anybody else came over here or wanted to see the deer or contacted you, or did you get any of that feedback?
Yeah. So this was before social media, really.
Right.
You know, it was right at the beginning of it, and I wasn't part of it.
Right.
So I wanted the next day. My best friend Hale came over here, and I said, I don't want any questions.
Right.
You know, I said, I want to take the deer, just like it was hanging there, put it back in the truck,
Right.
and we drove it over to the DEC
Right.
and had them check it.
Yeah.
I wanted them to check it. I kind of curious on the age and that, but I didn't want any question.
Right.
You know, there was bullet holes in it. You know, all that. I had 6 witnesses.
Right.
You know, to where I shot it,
Right.
when it was, all that. So, I just wanted to finalize that part.
Yeah.
Because I knew, just by being a hunter,
Yeah.
this isn't normal.
Right. Exactly.
And it was going to...
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not every day. In fact, there might be more, but I have never even heard in this area, in western New York, a 200+ inch deer is very hard to come by.
Yes, yeah. And you know, and that was all part of it too. I wanted them to see it,
Right.
the DEC, so they had information. And it was kind of cool. The gentleman that checked it at the DEC's office was from right around the corner here. He told me, and don't quote these numbers, but he said something like the percentage of hunters that get a trophy whitetail with a drop tine, that's one drop tine, is 0.03%.
Wow.
And this one's got 4.
Right.
And the longest point is a drop tine.
Right. Wow.
So, you know, what are the odds?
Right.
So, you know, everything that happened, you learn something from.
Yeah.
From the moment I got it, the news spread real fast.
Right.
That second day, I bet you there was 12 people standing where we are right now,
Right.
looking at it hanging here, while we cut him up.
Sure.
But I had somebody from Texas call me, and this was 2005, and he says, "Check out this deer. Somebody just sent me, an email with this deer," and I go, "Yeah, it's mine." Yeah, it's mine, which was cool. But you know, from that point on, everybody wanted to know about or see it.
Right.
You know, all the hunter people, and then everybody asked, "What's a score? What's a score? What's a score?"
Right.
And I didn't score. I didn't know anything about it. I knew some people that scored. So I called the one from New York State Big Buck Club,
Right.
and he says, "Well, I'm hunting, and it's not going to be dry for 60 days.
Right.
So call me in 60 days."
Right.
And I'm like, "Well, you know, this is, you know,
You wanted a
I
green
understand
score at
that,
least,
but you know, this is a pretty special thing. Is, you know, is there anybody that could score it?"
Right.
And he just says, "Not that I know that everybody's hunting."
Right.
So I'm like, "All right." So then, you know, a couple days later, I got hooked up with the Northeast Big Buck Club, and the guy says, "Come on down, bring it down right now. I'd love to see it."
Right.
And I went down, and he scored it that night, and I think we came up with a green score, you know, sitting on the, you know, not putting any official lines or tape
Right.
on it or something like that. It was like 198 and something.
Right.
And there was a couple points that, you know,
Right.
we weren't sure. There's a couple real small points that are real close to an inch we didn't count.
Right.
So, thinking that when it dried, they might not make it.
Right.
So, so at that point, I got 190s, you know,
Right.
and everybody was crazy around, you know, upstate New York. You
Oh,
get
yeah.
a 190s buck, and
Absolutely.
it ended up after 60 days, 201 and 6/8.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, and then net score is 192 and 5/8.
Wow. How wide is the inside spread on that one?
It's 23.5 inside.
Wow.
Yeah.
4 drop times. And you said one of the drop times is the
Yeah.
is the longest.
So this one right here, velvet on. It's got velvet on the end, and it's. I think that's the longest point. I think it's 9.5 inches.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah.
9.5-inch drop time.
Yeah.
Wow. Very impressive.
It's been a journey. Once I had shot him,
Mm-hmm.
you heard all the people that saw him alive.
Sure.
We never had.
Right.
And
Did they have any pictures of them or?
we had never come across a picture of him
Okay.
alive.
Wow.
He ran with a brother. They called them brothers.
Okay.
The brother had 2 drop tines as well.
Wow.
A friend of mine was actually mowing his little golf driving range. He would mow that, and he was mowing it one day, and he had, you know, to make a pit stop, and
Right.
stepped into the brush, and he said that both of them were laying down in the creek bed in full velvet.
Wow. That's wild.
And actually, I've got a picture of somebody harvested the brother that same year,
Right.
and I've got a picture of that one. I got a picture of them both together.
Wow.
So
That's cool. Very, very impressive. Well, you mentioned the Northeast Big Buck Club. I wanted to kind of switch conversations a little bit now and kind of talk. So it sounds like you got your start with them with this buck,
yes,
right? So, and now you are obviously an official scorer, but you're even more than that. You're the Northeast director, correct?
I am the New York State Regional Director.
Okay.
I am temporary records chairman.
Right.
And I am also on the board. The parent company of the Northeast Big Buck Club is the NOF, the Northeast Outdoors Foundation,
Right.
and I'm a board member on that.
Awesome. Do you want to kind of describe that organization, Nbbc?
Sure.
And you know, its purpose and mission and kind of. I know with me, when I first met you and I got it scored and got into the record books, one of the things I loved about it was that they focus on the gross score, you know, and that whatever the buck has in the field, whatever it truly grows is what matters. And I really like that, you know, because we have so many different unique bucks. Every buck is different, and it kind of allows you to focus on that versus it having, not that I mean, it's great to have a symmetrical buck, don't get me wrong.
Right.
And I love that too, but I also, it's great to not be penalized too, to have a very unique buck that, you know, something like this with all the different drop tines, and I know we'll look at the other bucks that you have throughout this shop that you made a little bit later, but there's a lot of unique bucks in here, and I love those differences, and you know, that's really impressive to me. So do you want to kind of describe a little bit more about that and the purpose of
Sure.
Nbbc?
So when I got the deer, this club was, you know, probably 10 years old. It was another scoring organization, just like Northeast, or just like New York State Big Buck Club,
Right.
Pope and Young, Boone and Crockett.
Right.
It's all the same scoring system,
Right.
and they all have their place, and that's great. You
Right.
know, New York State is a more exclusive club just because it's a higher entry score and it's going by net, so you're looking for that perfect, you know, symmetrical rack. And then you have your Pope and Youngs and your Boone and Crockett being the top of the top.
Right.
My buck here, 201 inches, did not make Boone and Crockett all time.
Right. That's wild. It's just crazy.
It made the awards, which is 185 to 195 net score. so the awards is they publish it in a 3-year period.
Right.
It was part of that, but it doesn't make all the time. So, they were great. They they invited me to come show it off. It was that hunting camp atmosphere that I talked about earlier.
Right.
You got together with a bunch of guys that are like-minded,
Right.
and girls, women, probably better shot than most of us, but
Right.
and you talked the same language.
Right.
Tree stands, food plots,
Yeah.
scent control, all those things you said earlier. It was that hunting camp atmosphere.
Right.
And some of my best, or most of my best friends now, are all from this club
Right.
because we're the same person.
Right.
We
Exactly.
really are. We breathe it.
Right.
So, anyways, so the Northeast Northeast Outdoors Foundation and the Big Buck Club. Big Buck Club is scoring,
Right.
and what we try to do is we have a higher or a lower entry score.
Mm-hmm.
It goes by gross, not net, so you know exactly what's on the top of its head.
Right.
And it's it's a chance for those people that to get that 120-inch deer, which in my opinion has always been a trophy.
Absolutely. Right.
And most people, that is going to be the biggest buck they'll ever get.
Right.
It gets that deer's it's just deserved.
Absolutely.
It
Right.
gets a chance to be in a book, and you can pass that on to your kids. Hey, I made the book.
Right.
Here's the magazine. We have a magazine that we print out. I got my picture in a magazine. I got my
Right.
name and my deer is in a magazine. So it just gave that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So I went through that. The Northeast Outdoors Foundation is a club, or an organization to promote our sport.
Right.
To do stuff for our youth. We have kids with cancer. We call it Spree Day, or terminal illnesses, not necessarily cancer. We get them out. We take them fishing and hunting. We have scholarship opportunities for people, kids that are going into a field that is to do with the outdoors. Especially with this youth season that we have now, all those kids that get those first buck, we give a chance to have their picture in a magazine. And
Right.
write a story, put it in there, and we have a little a section in there for that.
Right.
And that just kind of gets that ball rolling to
Right.
keep this going.
Sure.
So.
Absolutely. No, that's a great cause, and I just think it's awesome. We more and more these days, getting kids involved and getting them outdoors, and appreciating God's creation really here, and just hunting and fishing and appreciating all the wilderness out there is really important. So I love that these organizations you just mentioned really honor that and promote that, and I think we need more of that in our country. So that's a really good thing. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a blast, and we try we try to work with all these other clubs because they all have their place as well.
Sure.
And if we were at odds with each other,
Right.
Which would be easy to happen. Oh, I like this one better than that one.
Right.
If you're at odds with each other, that's not helping
Right.
anybody.
Right.
So we definitely accept all the score sheets from all the organizations.
Right.
We score a bunch of deer, and if they make our book, we try to say, hey, it will make New York State, it will make Pope and Young, it will make Boone and
Right.
Crockett.
Right.
And a lot of our scorers are certified for all that.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if they just wanted to score, I don't have a problem with that either.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're in that spot where I was that first day.
Absolutely.
What does it score, Andy?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you.
Exactly.
I'll do my best. And while I'm scoring it, I get to hear that story.
Absolutely.
I get to hear the story that I just told you.
Right.
you know, and it's a blast.
Oh, it is.
It's that
It
hunting
is.
camp.
It really is. That's, it's one of the reasons why I'm doing this type of podcast format, with Covey Clan Hunting and just other organizations is to capture those stories, those moments, those deer camp stories, as you call them, are the most powerful thing about this whole hunting concept, in my opinion. And we have to do our best to preserve those stories and share them. And there's so many, not just hunting lessons, but life lessons. I mean, you talked about earlier just the close relationship you had with your best friend Hal, your dad, and others. You'll never forget that. And you have that with you always. So that's really important.
And something like this is what you're doing is great because I won't be here forever.
Right.
None of us
Right.
will be.
Right.
And it will go on.
Right.
Someday your great grandson maybe
Right.
will see this.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's awesome.
Well, it's funny because I think about it a lot the older I get, and I'm not that old, but I think about, what is the legacy that I'm going to leave, and all these little things to me are all parts of our journey through life, and what are those lessons that you've learned through your experiences and through the hard work and the preparation. All these things are, we do it, and it's almost like it's not work because we enjoy it so much and we're passionate about it, right? But all those skills and that time that you put into it are really life lessons that other people can look at and say, hey, this is how you do it, or this is how you can be successful, or this is how you can move forward. Or when times are tough, this is how you handle it. And to me, it's not necessarily the adversity you face, but how you react to that adversity that matters. And in hunting, it tests that more than anything else, I feel. You got to be so patient out there and persevere through all these, you got a doe that scares the buck this one time, or, the wind switched and it messed you up, and, you're hunting with a muzzleloader and it doesn't fire properly, you got a misfire, or whatever it may be. All those things you got to handle, and even in your situation that you just described with this hunt, you had a 175-yard shot, right? And you knew that if you let it go another step, that buck might be gone forever. So you had to make a decision, right? And live with it, right? And then fortunately you were able to make some follow-ups and get that big buck down, but. There's something to be said for that perseverance, that determination, that hard work, that passion that we have for hunting, that I think that can translate into other areas of life.
In all aspects of life.
Right.
In your relationship with your spouse, relationship with your children, and your friends.
Yeah.
You have to, if you want something out of it, you have to put something into it.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, I wanted to shift gears, a couple more things, but we have this other big buck here sitting on the table. You want to hold that up, Andy, and just kind of...
Yeah, why don't you hold it up?
All right. Now this is another, to me, a world-class buck here. Just amazing. The mass on this animal is just so impressive. I'm gripping this whole thing and I can barely put my hands around it, how thick it is. Just a magnificent buck, tons of mass and character, and I wanted you to kind of describe this one for me real quick, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so this is 170-inch non-typical. I think it's 163-inch typical. Same within 100 yards of where I harvested the big buck. On 11-11-11, I had this buck come through. I was on the ground in a pinch point between two thickets.
Right.
And you can't hunt from the elevated because you can't see anything.
Right.
So this is just a one spot they like to cross. and I was sitting there, and he came through. First, I thought it was just a little buck,
Right.
just because they're so thick. And then he got closer, and I realized that's a nice buck. His body was so big, he really didn't look, like, that giant. And then he got to 18 yards. There's a fallen tree there, and I knew it was big. And what they do with that fallen tree is they usually come down, turn left, and it's 2 steps, and they're right 18 yards broadside on the ground.
Right.
I've shot a few buck there. Actually, my friend shot a super typical 12-point, same spot. He turned the other way. So my next shot is 90 degrees from me. I'm at full draw at 18 yards, and I got to look at
Right.
that mass for 2 minutes or so at full draw. Long story short, he got to the shooting lane 90 degrees from me. I was holding the string away from my face so it wouldn't break over.
Right.
And when he got to the shooting lane, I never brought the string back to my
Oh, wow.
cheek. So I shot right over his hindquarters, and he ran away sounding like a Clydesdale. Neighbor found it after season, dead. Don't know what killed it. It wasn't my arrow. But I've got the rack.
Right.
I go to shows all the time, with a big buck club and that, and this one never is going to get mounted because I bet you there's 1,000 kids holding this rack and their dad have a picture of it on their phone. It is just one of those cool things.
It really is.
And that will get anybody's blood boiling.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful, beautiful deer. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. They all have a story. I've got in this barn, I've got my grandfathers and great grandfathers deer. I've got my dad's racks in here. I've got a number of racks in here that are my friends that have passed away.
Right.
What happens to these, when we go?
Right.
And I try to, to honor them, for my friends.
Right.
I try to, I enjoy them, try to protect them, and someday, hopefully, somebody will take them. But I love to surround myself with. I love touching them. I love scoring them.
Absolutely.
I love hearing the stories. So.
Oh, absolutely. Well, why don't we, I want to thank you, first of all, for taking the time out to do this podcast / YouTube video.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome to hear the story of this giant buck as well as this one. But even more importantly than that, your love and passion for hunting, your relationships that you've formed in that whole process, and your dedication to the sport and to preserve it and to honor it is very evident. So thank you for setting that example. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I no problem. Thank you for all that you're doing. What you're doing here is promoting it just as much. It's this is something that I wish more people would do. Get out there and pass the buck.
Right.
Take a kid hunting. Take somebody that doesn't have the opportunity. They may be totally healthy. They just don't have the access to a spot.
Right.
Take them once.
Right.
You don't have to have them there all the time. Just take them once.
Exactly.
Take somebody, that's disabled in a wheelchair. It's not easy. I've done
Right.
it, but it's more rewarding for you than it is for them. At
Absolutely.
times.
Yeah.
And you develop another friendship.
Right.
So just try to give back. That's all we try to do.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right.